You know you need SOPs, standard operating procedures, documented playbooks for how your business actually runs. What happens when a customer complains? How you onboard a new team member? What steps get followed when an order goes sideways? And if you're like most small business owners I talk to, you've been meaning to write them for a while now. So what's actually stopping you? Because here's what I figured out. It's not that you don't know the process. You know exactly how to handle a customer complaint. You know what to check. You know what to say when you escalate and when you just issue the refund and move on. The problem isn't knowledge. The problem is getting it out of your head and into a document. And that turns out to be a completely different problem. Today, I'm going to show you how to use Claude to solve that. Not by asking to write an SOP for you, but by having it interview you about your own process and build the document from what you tell it. And then I'm going to show you the key elements inside the prompt that make this work, because the approach here is something you can adapt for a lot of different workflows in your business. So let's get into it. Here's the thing about writing an SOP. You already know the process. You've been running your complaint response, your order fulfillment, or your new customer onboarding for months, maybe even years. It isn't that the knowledge is missing. The problem is something called tacit knowledge, the things that you do automatically without ever consciously thinking about them. The mental checks you run before you respond to a complaint. The 3-second judgment call about whether this is a refund situation or a replacement. The flag that goes up when you recognize a customer has been here before. When you sit down to write an SOP yourself, you write what you consciously remember. That automatic stuff doesn't generally make it onto the page, not because you're being careless, because you've done it so many times it doesn't feel like a step anymore. It just feels like common sense. And that's exactly where this approach changes the equation, because instead of asking you to write, it interviews you, one question at a time. And when you give a vague answer, I figure out what they need, it pushes back. What specifically are you looking at before you respond? Did you pull up their order history first? In what system were you doing this? What would you find there that changes how you respond? That follow-up question is what pulls the tacit knowledge out. And that's the difference between an SOP that describes how you think you do the things and one that captures how you actually do them. What I'm going to show you is a skill, a set of instructions you load into Claude once and activate with a simple command anytime you want to document a process. No coding, no special setup beyond loading the skill. You type /SOP-creator and Claude shifts into interview mode and starts working through your process with you systematically. The interview covers 6 phases: scoping the process, understanding its purpose and who owns it, identifying what needs to be in place before you start, walking through the actual procedure step by step, capturing what the output looks like, and documenting what can go wrong. At the end, Claude produces a complete formatted SOP document right there in the chat window. You copy it, drop it into Google Docs, paste it into Notion, save it wherever your documentation lives. Now let me show you what this actually looks like in practice. Okay, so this is my Claude chat, and I'm going to trigger this skill that I created by using the command /SOP-creator. Claude says, at phase 1, what internal process do you want to document? Give it a short name and a 1-line description of what it does. Customer complaint handling, how I respond when a customer contacts me about a problem with their order. Let me push a little bit deeper here. Before they even open WooCommerce, what information do they need from the complaint itself to get started? For example, are they looking for an order number, the customer's email, what they purchased, or something else? They're looking for the customer's email so that they can look up the customer in WooCommerce. They need to have the order number, and they need to know what the item the customer is complaining about, what product or service that item is. They also need to know when that order was purchased. When you hand it off to the virtual assistant, how does that happen exactly? Do you forward the email, send a Slack message, something else? What do you give them when you pass it over? I'll send a message in Slack with the complaint thread and the order history and just tell them it needs a senior review. When you figured out the category, what does the decision actually look like? Is it purely judgment from reading the complaint, or are there specific signals you're looking for that push it into one bucket versus another? So once I figured out the category, I need to decide what to do about it, whether to refund, replace, or escalate. And mostly, I look at the order value. If it's under $50, I just handle it myself. Refund or replace, it's whatever the customer wants. Between 50 and 150, I try to offer a replacement first. Over 150, I always escalate to my virtual assistant regardless of what the complaint is. So there's a clear 3-tier decision based on the order value. Under $50, you handle it directly. Refund or replace, customer's choice. 50 to 150, you lead with a replacement offer. And over 150, it always goes to the VA regardless of complaint type. For the over $150 escalation, is that the same Slack process as the 90-day handoff, or does it work differently? Yes, that's the same Slack handoff process. So the process closes with the log entry in the Google Sheet. It's a clean ending. Let me reflect the full process before we move on. The complaint comes in, arrives via email, a contact form, or social media. Pull up the customer in WooCommerce and the order table and customer table using their email. Check for complaints or refunds requests in the last 90 days. If flagged, hand it off to the VA via Slack with a complaint thread and order history marked senior review. If no flag, categorize the complaint, shipping, product, or satisfaction issue. Apply the order value decision tree for under $50, 50 to 150, or over 150. And for direct handled cases, acknowledge the original channel, send a resolution via email and Gmail within 4 business hours. Process the refund or replacement in WooCommerce immediately, and then WooCommerce auto sends the confirmation and log the complaint in the Google Sheet. Nope, nothing is off or missing. That looks great. For public social media complaints, what's different about how you handle those? Okay. I only respond publicly on social media with an acknowledgement, something like DM us your order number or your email address and we'll sort it out. I never offer a refund or a replacement in public. Then I handle it privately through email. So that covers all 6 phases. Let me put the draft together now. There's a customer complaint handling with the purpose, the trigger and frequency, inputs and prerequisites, the procedure that's laid out here with all of the steps that we discussed during the interview, the outputs, the quality standards, exceptions and edge cases, and tools and systems that get referenced. Nothing to correct or add at this time. Can you please provide that as a markdown file that I can download? And here we have our full markdown file that I can download now, or even download as a markdown or as a PDF. That SOP from start to finish took about 20 minutes of conversation. No blank page, no trying to remember your own process, no getting halfway through and realizing you forgot to document what happens when a repeat complainer shows up. And I want you to notice that last part specifically. That bit about looping in a VA for accounts with complaints in the last 90 days, I didn't volunteer that. Claude asked. It pushed back on, I figure out what they need with what specifically are you looking for? And that follow-up question is what pulled out that detail. That's the specific difference between asking Claude to write an SOP and having a prompt that interviews you. One gets you a generic template and the other gets you your actual process. If this is the kind of practical AI implementation you've been looking for, real tools, real workflows, nothing generic, then hit that like button. It helps YouTube know to show this video to other small business owners looking for this kind of content. And if you want more of this kind of content, hit subscribe too. I provide videos every week for small business owners looking to leverage AI to make their business more successful. So let me pull back the curtain on what's actually inside this skill. Because if you want to adapt this approach for a different workflow in your business, there are 4 elements that you cannot leave out. Element 1, one question at a time. This is the rule that makes everything else possible. And it's the one most people skip when they try to build something like this. Without it, Claude's going to hand you a 12-question form. You're going to skim through it, answer casually, and you'll get a shallow SOP that misses half of what you actually do. The constraint of one question forces depth on both sides. You answer more carefully, and Claude has the space to actually process your answer before asking the next thing. Build this rule into any prompt where you need Claude to pull information out of someone. It's a non-negotiable. Element 2. The probing playbook. This is where the tacit knowledge gets captured. The probing playbook is a specific set of patterns you give Claude that tells it exactly how to push past a vague answer. You saw it in this demo. Without this layer, the SOP captures what you think you do. With it, it captures what you actually do. And that's not always a small difference. Element 3, phase reflection. After each phase of the interview, Claude summarizes what it heard and waits for you to confirm before moving on. Got it. So we're documenting your customer complaint process from the moment the complaint comes in through the resolution. Sound right? That one step catches misunderstandings before they get baked into everything that follows. If Claude misunderstood something in phase 2, you catch it in phase 2, not when you're reading the finished document and something's off. If you're building a prompt that gathers information over multiple stages, put a reflection step at the end of each one. It costs like 2 sentences in your instructions, and it saves you a ton of rework. Element 4, a structured output template. The skill specifies exactly what the finished document should look like, which sections to include, what level of detail to capture, and how to handle decision points within a step. Without this, you get a wall of text. All the right content organized however Claude feels like organizing it that day. With a template, the document that comes out of the interview is already the finished product. You don't need another pass to make it usable. Now, the full skill behind what I showed you today lives inside the AI Growth Accelerator membership, along with a walkthrough of exactly how to load it and get it running. I'll tell you how to get access in just a second, but if you want to take this concept and build something similar for a different workflow in your business, an onboarding process, a content approval workflow, a sales handoff, maybe a fulfillment process, here's the thinking that has to go into it. Design it as an interview, not a questionnaire. One question at a time. Build in pushback on vague answers. That's where the useful information lives, and Claude will not go there on its own without explicit instructions to do so. Add a reflection step between phases so nothing gets assumed or lost. Give it an output template so Claude knows exactly what to produce and how to structure it when the interview is done. The specific questions will change depending on what you're documenting. That underlying design never does. Now, the full skill, setup instructions, and a library of other practical AI workflows like this one, that's all inside the AI Growth Accelerator membership. I put the link in the description, and you get a 7-day free trial when you sign up. So come check it out. If you've got a process in your business that you've been meaning to document for months, like a complaint workflow or an onboarding checklist or a fulfillment process, try this approach. 20 minutes. You might be surprised what's been sitting in your head this whole time.